We all have an idol. Someone we look up to, someone we admire, someone that we maybe even love. But at what point does that love turn into obsession? And when does that obsession turn into murder? Today we're taking a deep dive into one of the most tragic cases in K-pop history. In 1995, Kim Sung-jae, a K-pop idol from the 90s, was found dead in his hotel room. Earlier that night, he'd been on stage performing his comeback single live on TV, but little did his legions of fans know, Kim Sung-jae's solo career would die along with him just a few hours after the cameras stopped rolling. He was found with 28 unexplained injection wounds in his arm, wounds that he couldn't possibly have inflicted on himself. Or could he? For decades, generations of K-pop fans have been dedicated to seeking justice. They've transformed into a formidable group of armchair detectives, scouring the evidence and sharing their theories on K-pop blogs. Ever since then, fandom blogs have been full of different rumors about what really happened on that fateful night. But out of all of these rumors and theories, none have been quite as strange and elusive as the stories surrounding his girlfriend at the time. In 1996, she was actually convicted of Kim Sung-jae's murder, but she was later found not guilty and released from jail. But most of Sung-jae's fanbase don't believe that for a second. Their beloved idol's untimely death unraveled into a mystery that has changed everything his fans thought they knew about him, and everything they thought they knew about the K-pop industry. So thank God it's Freaky Friday. Today we're going to be uncovering the mysteries of the unsolved death of a 90s K-pop legend. This series is intended for educational purposes, to document mysteries, historical events, and amplify important conversations. All opinions stated are mine alone. Before we get into the episode, I want to thank our sponsor for making this video possible, Wild. Girlies, let me tell you, if you are aiming for that clean girl springtime aesthetic that I am aiming for, then listen up. You have got to try Wild. Wild are vegan, cruelty-free, all of their things are made with safe and natural ingredients. They contain no harsh chemicals or aluminium salts, nothing that's bad for your skin, but they do contain a whole load of things that are great for your skin, like shea butter and coconut oil. And let me tell you, that is such a godsend when it comes to deodorants, because fine, I'll be vulnerable with you for a second. Sometimes I fall victim to dry pit syndrome. I forget to moisturize my pits. It's kind of invisible to me when I'm moisturizing after the shower. So if my deodorant has moisturizer in it, I need it. And even though these deodorants are natural, they still offer 24-hour odor protection, which is essential for me. I will not wear a deodorant if it's not gonna cover my smell. And I recently flew to America on obviously a really long haul flight, and I couldn't think of anything worse than stinking out a whole cabin that you're holding people hostage on for hours. So Wild really had my back. But the thing I love the most about Wild is how sustainable and brilliant for the environment they are. They help to get rid of so much waste. I cannot believe how much waste I used to have when I was going through a deodorant thingy and then throwing the whole damn thing away. With Wild, you get the reusable case, which is so cute. They come in so many different colors and patterns. You can even get your name engraved on them. And you guys know me. If I can get my name on something, you already know it's going to be there. So you have your reusable container, and then the deodorant refills come in these little compostable pods that you pop in, and then when you're done with it, you can compost them. And there's no waste. I just think it's perfect. Apparently, every refill saves 30 grams of plastic as well. Think about that in the long term, and think about how consistently you use deodorant and have done for years. Imagine what that could actually change for the environment if we all switch to this. And did you know that May is actually International Bee Month? Which is so cute, I never knew that. And to celebrate, Wild has teamed up with Emma Bridgewater to release their limited edition bee cases for the deodorants. And they have limited edition springtime scents that are coming out with this collection. So the deodorant one is honey and cactus flower scented, which is so unique. I've never heard of cactus flower being used as a scent, but this, oh my god, it's such a lovely combination. The honey and the cactus flower complement each other so well. It's sweet, it's floral, it's sexy, it's mine, it's on my armpits right now. And they also have a scent coming out in the body wash, which is honey and almond. Oh my god, I'm a fiend for almond scented things. Anything that will make me smell like a cherry bakewell, I'm all over it. I just love this collection. I feel like this collection was made for me. They had a picture of my face on the board in the meeting when they were coming up with this collection. But all jokes aside, you guys loved Wild last time I worked with them, and so I'm really excited to let you know that their discount is coming back. You can use my code Eleanor Wild for 20% off of all Wild products. That's their deodorants, their body wash. We love a sustainable self-care routine that's going to help you and the environment. So go and grab yourself something from Wild while you can get that 20% off. This code will last until the end of this month. So thanks again to Wild both for sponsoring this video and for that amazing discount. Now, before we get into this Freaky Friday episode, I just want to warn you that we're going to be covering a lot of sensitive topics, as is commonplace on this channel. Today, we're specifically going to be covering themes of suicide, drug abuse, and domestic abuse, so viewer discretion is advised. And with all of that being said, let's dive into the case that has haunted the K-pop world for over 3 decades now. In the early morning of November 20th, 1995, K-pop legend Kim Sung-jae was found dead in room 52 of the Swiss Grand Hotel in Seoul under suspicious circumstances. He was just 23 years old. His death was incredibly sudden and unexpected. Just a few hours before, he had performed his debut solo single live on South Korean national TV. It was supposed to be the start of a super successful solo career, but unfortunately, Kim Sung-jae and all of his fans would never get to see what a star he could have been on his own. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's go back to 1972, when Sung-jae's journey to K-pop stardom began. He was born on April 18th, 1972 in Seoul, South Korea. From a super young age, it was always obvious that Kim Sung-jae was going to be a star. His mum, Yoo-seon, would actually catch him putting on these like makeshift performances to his stuffed animals, holding something that was supposed to resemble a microphone, just dancing about, singing anything. And when his mum would meet with other mothers in the neighborhood and Sung-jae was by her side, he would like confidently march into the middle of the circle and just start performing for the mums. Remember how as a kid you would like choreograph your own performances and force your parents, like literally drag them to the sofa to watch you put on this Grammy-worthy performance? Well, I imagine it was a lot like that. A lot like the shows that I would put on, only Sung-jae could actually sing, and he was actually a performer. Later on, when he was in high school, he started making a little bit of extra money from doing dancing, and we couldn't find exactly like what kind of dancing, whether it was backup dancing or like dance battles, because to be fair, all of that was going on where he lived at the time, so it really could have been anything. But just in general, he clearly had this thirst for performance that was so strong inside him right from birth. And with the small amount of money that Sung-jae would earn from these little dancing gigs, he would spend most of it on his little brother, Kim Sung-wook. The two brothers were just so close. They were like best friends. They were only 2 years apart in age, and apparently they were practically joined at the hip when they were growing up. So it makes so much sense that as an older brother, he would go out and make a little bit of money and he would just want to spend it on his little best friend. Sung-jae was kind of like a second dad to Sung-wook. He was always watching over him, always looking after him, always trying to get the best for him. And he would always encourage his younger brother to reach for the stars and to follow his dreams and to work hard to make it happen as well. He was very grounded in reality, but also a dreamer. And I love that combination of someone that wants to make something of themselves and they are going to put in the work to do it. Sung-jae was exactly like that, and he wanted his little brother to be exactly like that too. And when Sung-jae actually first started his career and he was getting his beginnings, he would come home after a day of work and he would sit and tell his little brother everything, and he would just be amazed. He would sit there in silence just absorbing everything that his brother had to say because he thought he was amazing. He really idolized his own older brother. But after Sung-jae died, Sung-wook really struggled. It was like he couldn't figure out how to take on the world without his older brother by his side. And he changed a lot following that. And it was really hard for their mother to watch because, of course, not only had she lost her oldest son, but now her youngest son was totally lost without his partner in crime, his best friend, his idol. But Sung-wook was always finding ways to stay connected with his brother and to keep his brother's spirit alive. In fact, he actually followed in Sung-jae's footsteps and became a singer. Eventually, when he was like making a name for himself and stepping into the K-pop world, he was stepping into a world that his brother had helped to shape as one of the very first like K-pop, or shall I say K-hip-hop legends, because really that's what Sung-jae started out as. We'll get into it a bit more in a minute. K-pop kind of came about after K-hip-hop, but Sung-jae is generally referred to as just like a Korean music legend. But he was like mainly hip-hop, half pop, I don't know, just a big amalgamation of whatever he enjoyed doing and whatever he wanted. And I think that always makes the best kind of stars, people that don't niche themselves too much, people that are willing to mix different inspirations from different parts of their life. And that's what Sung-jae was. He was a sponge for all of this other artistry in the world, and then he would make his own creations from that. Now, seasoned K-pop fans that are tuning into this episode, give me a second, because I am about to explain to everyone that doesn't know what the K-pop world is. Korean pop music, or K-pop, is a genre from South Korea that blends catchy songs and high-energy dance routines like major choreography and very visually striking music videos. They're always very high concept, very high production. K-pop often combines elements of hip-hop, pop, obviously, electronic dance music, and of course, it has one of the largest global fan bases of anything ever. I feel quite confident saying that because genuinely K-pop fans are everywhere, especially in the 2020s with like the internet and everything. Like, it is becoming so widespread, and let me tell you, I'm a K-poppy. I love K-pop. I'm more into girl bands myself, like the girl groups aespa, Twice, ITZY. But enough about me, back to like K-pop beginnings. K-pop kind of started in the 90s, and Sung-jae was part of that very first wave of K-pop artists. Like I said, he kind of got his start in K-hip-hop, which is what made him one of the first K-pop frontrunners. At the time in the 90s, American hip-hop was obviously massive in America, and it had such a huge influence on the K-pop music of that time. But hip-hop didn't arrive in Korea through like rappers and DJs, how you might expect, like how it was in America. It came over to Korea more in the form of dance. And some of today's biggest K-pop groups like EXO, BTS, and even Twice got a lot of inspiration from these very early hip-hop dancers. It's crazy to think that this massive world of K-pop that we know today actually got its roots from the underground hip-hop scene in Seoul back in the 90s. So at the time when Sung-jae was blending pop music and hip-hop, it was groundbreaking. No one had really done that before in Korea, and it was because he was so unique and so just generally talented that Sung-jae became one of the very first generation K-pop idols. Of course, fellow K-poppies, you know what an idol is, but for those of you that have maybe not heard that term before, it is exactly what it sounds like, genuinely. It's someone that you idolize. It's basically just the term for a K-pop star. They're a K-pop idol, you know, where we would say like a pop star, they're an idol. And these idols, no matter who they are, no matter what genre, no matter what space of the entertainment industry they fit into, all idols are expected to be absolutely perfect, both in the public eye and behind closed doors. They are not allowed to make any mistakes. Idols always have to be giving their best performance, looking their best, be always smiling. They have to sing perfectly. They have to get all the choreography right. They can't have any like personal life dilemmas. Even things like rumors of physical health issues or mental health issues can be career jeopardizing for idols because it makes them seem less than perfect. People want to imagine these idols as as something beyond human. They are so perfect. They don't have all the same human issues that me and you have. K-pop idols don't cry. They don't take a shit on the toilet. Like, they don't. I don't know. People want to view K-pop idols as something bigger than the rest of all of us. And they forget that these are real human beings that have been born from their mother the same way that me and you have. There is nothing that makes them predisposed to being so perfect. They are just a regular human being, and it causes so many issues. There are so many rules for K-pop idols, both spoken and unspoken. There's a lot of obvious ones, like they're not allowed to be seen drinking, really. Drugs are a huge no-no. That is like completely career destroying, which is very interesting, and we'll get more into that as this case goes on, because it really does interweave its way into Sung-jae's story. But I just want to say here how odd that is, that drugs are so frowned upon in the Korean music scene, yet they are celebrated in like American music. It's all about like how many perks you popped and how many like lines they done in the bathroom. I don't know. Clearly, you can tell I only really listen to Twice these days. I guess alcohol and drugs are more obvious, but even things like they're not allowed to get like a parking ticket. Like, God forbid they park in the wrong place accidentally and they get a parking ticket. Career destroying. They're late to an interview or to make up for a shoot. Career destroying. They have no respect for people's time. They're a diva. Like, genuinely, they can't win. And I've really realised this being a K-pop fan, that like a woman will put on like 3 pounds and everyone's like, oh my God, she's so fat. And then like there's loads of edits like calling her a pig. And I'm like, oh my God, where is your humanity? Sorry, I get quite heated about it, especially because I've seen how it affects my girls. Jonghyun from Twice has gotten so much flack over her fluctuating weight, and it's so heartbreaking to see. And it just really frustrates me, because it's like, are we not all here for the music? Are we not all here for the good vibes? Like, why are you gonna tear this girl down? But these really, really high standards exist because the K-pop industry is so competitive. If you're not the perfect idol, someone else will be. And then they'll be the ones getting all the streams and all the shows and all the fans. If you're not perfect, if you're not trying to be completely perfect, then there's no point even trying at all. K-pop idols aren't just entertainers, they're a whole entire brand to their agency. Like, their images are very often like carefully curated and created, often out of nowhere. Like, they will give these people personality traits and a different hair color and a different favorite color, like a different way that they dress. They will just create a whole person and make them marketable to their fans. For Korean idols, having this perfect image is not optional. Fans can get really, really upset or even turn their back on idols completely if they stop meeting these really high expectations. See Jonghyun from Twice. We'll discuss this a bit more later on, but some K-pop fans really believe that the lives of these idols belong to them as the fans, as if it's not a real human being standing up there with all of her own thoughts and feelings and emotions and things that she wants to do, things that she wants to say that she is not allowed to do because a bunch of teenage fans said that they will stop buying the album if she puts on 3 pounds. But on the flip side of that, I'm gonna stop ragging on K-pop fans for a second. I do just want to clarify actually that it is only the entitled K-pop fans that act like that. As I was saying before, K-pop fans are such a huge group, global these days, to the point where, of course, most of them are very lovely and they love their idols and they just want the best for them. They are very supportive, but we have to acknowledge the very vocal, entitled minority that honestly treat their idols like shit. And I don't understand it. I've never understood why people will love someone so much to the point where they, treat them like shit. I even see it with influencer friends of mine, where fans will think they're on a level with them where they can like insult them and shit like that. And I'm like, no, oh my God, stop it. But for the good fans, for the good eggs, we can only imagine how devastating it must have been when their favourite idol was found dead, with hardly any answer given as to what really happened to him. 1 minute, Kim Sung-jae was there, his smile lighting up the room, his new song filling the ears of everyone in the audience, and then the next, he's dead. He was just 23 years old when his dead body was found in his hotel room that left very little clues except for 28 injection marks in his right arm. And the exact cause of these 28 injections, that's a hell of a lot, the cause of them has never actually been identified. And that is still a cause of a lot of speculation and conspiracy to this day. And I have to give it to K-pop fans. For the last 3 decades since Kim Sung-jae's death, they have refused to let this case grow cold. And in this video, we're going to be talking a lot about the fans. That's why we've done a decent amount of background on the fans, because they had such an input in us piecing together this case. Honestly, the CIA or like MI5 need to hire some of these people, because the detective work that they have been doing on these K-pop forums is mad. The K-pop fans in the blogs have taken it upon themselves to piece together timelines, to investigate any evidence, and have even started government petitions to reopen this case. But in many ways, this could be quite a double-edged sword, because there are 2 very different sides to the K-pop fandom, as I have already explained to you. And in the particular case of Kim Sung-jae, I think most of them mean well, of course. A lot of them are just trying to solve this case because they love him so much and they love his music and his legacy, and they want to solve this. But in doing so, some fans have gone overboard. There's a lot of speculation, a lot of false rumours circulating about what happened that night, which means it's been a little bit hard for us as a research team to, you know, pick apart what is speculation and what's been circulating on the internet for like 10 years that's not actually true. It's been one hell of a case. And every K-pop fan site has its own theory about what happened on the night of Sung-jae's death. And we're going to jump into a lot of these rumors and a lot of these theories and unpack what makes sense and what doesn't. But beyond these rumors lie some dark truths about the cost of perfection that is demanded from idols in this industry. And at the time, Kim Sung-jae really did seem to live up to these inhumanly perfect expectations. He was handsome, he was a multi-talented singer, rapper, dancer, and a true fashion icon. He had such an overwhelming charisma, both on and off stage. He was a total heartthrob. His fans just loved him as a person and his music and his energy and his aesthetic, just everything. I remember I said he was doing like a few odd dancing jobs in high school. Well, it didn't actually take long after he left high school for Sung-jae to get noticed. In 1990, when he was 18 years old, Sung-jae got his big break when he auditioned to be part of a backup dancing crew for a group named Hyunjin-young and Wawa. Wawa was the backup dancing crew, so Sung-jae was now part of Wawa. Hyunjin-young was known as like one of the first artists to bring hip-hop music to South Korea, and he's the guy that's considered to have started it all, really. At the time, Hyunjin-young was very, very popular with the Korean youth, and this was like the perfect job for Sung-jae, who's looking to get into this industry. But Hyunjin-young was ever so slightly controversial. Nothing major, but he was just so unique and different that it actually scared a lot of like Korean parents that their kids were listening to this thing that they didn't understand. And Hyunjin-young actually became one of the first artists to be signed by one of those big K-pop agencies that we know now. And that all sounds well and good, right? But not exactly, because Hyunjin-young is actually kind of the whole reason that the very toxic training system in the K-pop industry actually began. Back in 1993, Hyun got caught up in a big drugs scandal, which pretty much ended his whole entire career, and his manager was totally devastated. This guy went from one of the most promising rising stars to such a fall from grace. And do you want to know what it was over? Marijuana use. And I'm not going to get into the politics of that, but marijuana use ruined his whole career. That's crazy. But anyway, his manager was super, super upset because he'd invested so much time and money and energy and emotion into this young prodigy that he was like training and raising and putting out there into the K-pop industry, and then he'd gone and fucked it all up. So now the manager was done taking risks on these young K-pop idols. They decided that they were done putting all of this time, effort, money into just pure talent and hoping that it would work, hoping that that talented person would also meet all of these insanely high standards of a K-pop idol, which, as we've said, normal human beings cannot attain such constant perfection day in and day out. So naturally, of course, it was all going to fall apart. Unless the agencies could train someone to be a perfect star before they even put them out into the public eye. And that is how the whole trainee system started in the K-pop industry. And this trainee system is no joke. It is a grueling process that K-pop idols have to go through. They train like crazy, sometimes up to like 18 hours a day. They will be learning to sing and dance, learning the choreography, you name it, they're training. This process can go on for years and years before they're even put out into the public eye. And even then, there's no guarantee that they will actually make it as a big star. They're just more predisposed to be able to make it because they're a good dancer and stuff. In the last couple of years, these trainee systems have faced a lot of backlash for some of the insane shit that they make these idols do, or these like trainee idols. They'll put them on like extreme crash diets, infamous. There's so many infamous diets of these K-pop idols where they'll eat like one boiled egg in the morning and then a glass of water for dinner. And of course the sleep schedules, as I said earlier, some of the training days are like 18 hours long. How many hours does that give them for sleep? What, like 2? My math is off. My math is severely off. But if you like put in all of the like getting up and having a shower and having lunch in the middle of the day, well, they probably weren't having that much lunch. It actually seems like torture. It feels like one of those camps that they send people to like completely wear them down. But all of that isn't even the worst part, because some idols will even face abuse at the hands of their agency. I mean, if all of that isn't abuse enough in itself, being forced to go on these diets, being forced to have less than 3 hours sleep a night, maybe. But on top of that, they can face emotional, psychological, and sometimes even physical or sexual abuse from their agencies. And they've just got to put up with it because they want to be a star. And that's just how the industry is. And they think, well, if idols don't like it and they don't want to be a part of it, then they can go and get a normal job. But if they want to be an idol, then they have to put up with all kinds of abuse. As far as we're aware, Sung-jae never really went through this like intense, grueling process. This seems to be more of a modern thing, but I thought it was worth mentioning anyway, because I wanted this video to be half a deep dive into Sung-jae's career and his unsolved tragic death, but also half a deep dive into just the K-pop industry and how scary it actually is behind the scenes. I think it's easy to forget about when all we're seeing is these like bubblegum pop, like bright colored music videos with all this cute choreography and they're all smiling and everything. But you forget like actually what they're going through behind the scenes. But like I said, I don't think Sung-jae was ever going through these like trainee things. He did seem to get his start a lot more organically, a lot more how you would imagine anyone getting their music career start. He started out small, started getting little gigs and just grew from there. So in the 1990s, he was a backup dancer for Hyun Jin-young. He was part of the Wawa. And suddenly this meant that he was rubbing shoulders with super famous, influential people, especially in the industry that he wanted to be in. It opened so many doors for him. And it was during his time dancing with Wawa, between these like really long rehearsals and back-to-back performances, that he built a really strong friendship with one of the other dancers in the troupe named Lee Hyun-do. The two of them just clicked. They both shared an ambition that stretched beyond dancing in the shadows of someone else's spotlight. They both had big dreams and they were both incredibly talented in their own right. They wanted to be more than backup dancers. So together, they decided to get out there onto the neon-lit streets of Seoul and find their own unique sound. It wasn't long before they decided to join forces and create their own legendary duo. And this duo was none other than deux. The French word for two. As I've been saying this out loud to people in my life over the past week, I've had to be like, deux. Like, deux? So they're like, what? They were called deux? And I'm like, no, say it with an accent. It's deux. And together, deux would be a group that defined K-hip-hop and K-pop eventually. Everything started moving pretty fast for them once they became a duo, and by 1993, DUE had already released their first album. And around this time, when DUE were really becoming something, there was this one particular place in Seoul where everyone who's anyone would hang out. It was the place to be for people in this industry. It was this vibrant, unconventional little district that still remains in the beating heart of the K-pop scene to this day. And this place was called Itaewon. Is called Itaewon. It's still there. And back in the 90s, there was a club in Itaewon called Moon Night, and it was the club. And this was where the magic happened. This was where you were gonna get noticed. This was where you needed to be if you wanted to network, if you wanted to get discovered, if you wanted your presence known in the industry. This is where everyone was. And it was actually in Itaewon in Seoul where this hip-hop influence from America actually first arrived. It was so concentrated in that area because in the 90s, after the Korean War, there were a lot of American and African-American soldiers still in that area, and when they'd come over from America, they'd brought all of their culture and their music with them, and this was really introducing people like Michael Jackson and Bobby Brown to Seoul. And so in Moon Night Club, they would often play a lot of this like American music that was very new and very interesting to a lot of the people that were in there, and they would learn all these new dance moves that were associated with this kind of music. Sung-jae learned to do like the Running Man in this club, and I think that's so funny, like to imagine the Running Man coming over to your city as like this new crazy like dance move that they're doing across the seas. It's so exotic. Meanwhile, it's just some guy like Itaewon was really this big melting pot of culture at this point in time that really helped us shape Sung-jae into the artist that he would become. But it was around this point in 1993 where everything started to take a turn. Now, I have already mentioned that DUE released their debut album, but that actually came later on that year after Hyun had his big drug scandal. And I know I mentioned earlier that it was over smoking marijuana, but that was only the first time in 1991. This time, in 1993, it was for methamphetamines, which is even more serious. It turns out that in 1991, of course, he was caught smoking marijuana and he was sent to prison for it. And while he was there, he met a drug dealer who ended up putting him on to so many more other substances and really fucked up his life. And that is so sad to me. Like, that is such a sad set of circumstances that he was, first of all, imprisoned for smoking weed once. That's insane to me. Don't want to get into the politics of marijuana in this video, but it's not killed anyone. I guess people say that it's a gateway drug and whatever. But to have been thrown in prison for smoking marijuana once, and then that, because you were thrown in prison, that's fucked up your whole entire life, your career. Honestly, I think that his career would have bounced back from smoking marijuana once. I feel like people are a bit more forgiving of that than they are methamphetamines. That is what ruined his career. That is what ruined his reputation. That is what fucked everything up for Hyun and the Wawa. And I really think that kind of gave a kick up the arse to Kim Sung-jae and Lee Hyun-do for them to like actually make something out of DUE. And so when Hyun was cancelled, basically, they decided to, separate from that and become DUE full-time. The K-pop industry can be very tough and unforgiving, especially when it comes to drug allegations and even worse, drug convictions. Like, actually getting caught by the police is career ending. Even speculation could be close to career ending. Like, if an idol looks like high in a video or looks to kind of like bob off screen or something. Have you seen those clips of Nicki Minaj like on Instagram Live where she like puts her head off screen and then you can hear a sniffing noise? That's crazy to me. Totally unrelated, but like the K-pop idols aren't doing that, yet Nicki Minaj's career is fine, and I could really get into why Nicki Minaj's career should not be fine right now. I guess that's just another example of like how Western artists do not have these insanely high standards. She can be married to a rapist, her brother could be a rapist, and no one gives a crap. And that infuriates me. Maybe we'll do an episode on Nicki Minaj one day. Oh my god, sorry, this is still unrelated to the case at hand, but I've done some more Googling on Nicki Minaj's brother. he raped an 11-year-old. What the fuck? Oh my God. Guys, I'm sorry, this is the first time I've properly looked into all this Nicki Minaj stuff. Her husband faced a first-degree rape charge after a 16-year-old girl accused him of sexually assaulting her at knife point. And Nicki Minaj defends these two men. That is disgusting to me. Anyway, back to the case at hand. Sorry, just had to do a moment to berate Nicki Minaj. But back to the K-pop industry and the things that they don't like and the things that they don't let slide with their idols. Of course, drugs, drinking, parking tickets, being late for things, everything we've already mentioned. But I haven't mentioned yet how much of an issue tattoos are over there. In Korea, tattoos are often seen as like gang symbols, something that is representative of something dangerous and disgusting, when really it's like just a butterfly that I like the look of and now it's on my wrist. They actually end up like blurring out tattoos on like national TV and stuff, kind of the way that they would with any other like violent or harmful content. They blur out the little butterfly on a lady's arm. And of course, this stark difference in opinions is very much reflected in the music scenes of these different places. Of course, Korean idols are not allowed to even be seen taking drugs or even speculated to be taking drugs. Whereas in Western countries, like in the UK, in America, it's almost seen as cool. And it's also quite a thing in like Western music culture that sometimes people will use drugs to help with the creative process of making music. And actually, a lot of artists have been very open about how they've used especially psychedelics to help them make some of the most treasured records in music history. Classic records like the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, whatever that was called. Oh my God, so many words. Like the song Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. It's literally about LSD. And famously, Fleetwood Mac recorded Rumours on a truckload of cocaine. They actually joked about if you lined up all of the cocaine that they had snorted while making that record, it would stretch for 7 miles. And even on a bit more of a simpler level of like the themes that we enjoy in music in the West, like some of the biggest songs of the past few years have been like Can't Feel My Face by The Weeknd, which is about like how his lover feels like taking a fuckload of cocaine. And then there's artists like Snoop Dogg that make it their whole entire shtick. That man is the 420 god, smoke weed every day in every single song. I love him, but also how much of a fucking difference is that? So yeah, when Hyun Jin Young of Hyun Jin Young and Wawa was found to be doing all these drugs, it completely shattered his whole entire career. And after this scandal, he lost everything. His management, his reputation, his fans, and he never really got his career back on track. So in 1993, when this massive drug scandal hit and the group that they danced for was no longer really a thing, they decided, they being Kim Sung-jae and Lee Hyun-do, they decided to distance themselves from their past in that group as much as they possibly could and try to market themselves as kind of like brand new fresh stars in DUE. They didn't want to be connected with their backup dancer history. So later on that year, when they were both just 21 years old, they released their debut album that was called DUE. I love a self-titled album. And this really freaking took off. If their lives were crazy before this, being backup dancers in Wawa, they had no idea what was about to hit them. Suddenly, DUE were everywhere. With hit songs like Get Out of the Bondage and Wound, they quickly rose to be some of the most influential artists of the 90s. A whole group of hardcore fans for the duo began to erupt in Seoul. Everyone was enamored by these two boys. Everything about them was so unique and electrifying and revolutionary. This was something that they hadn't really seen before in Seoul. Lee Hyun-do was known as like the main writer and composer. He was the more hands-on musically, whereas Sung-jae was known for creating the duo's image and their aesthetic. Of course, both of them sung and danced, and they did it very freaking well, but Sung-jae was very much about the visuals of the group, and he was so attuned to what was fresh and new and hip in their area. Oh my God, I just sounded so old, didn't I? Fresh and new and hip. And very quickly, these two boys became style icons. They were known for their stage costumes that were very reminiscent of like ice hockey uniforms, you know, the big baggy pants and like big black goggles, thick gloves. And on top of how cool they looked, they also hit those insanely high standards to be a perfect idol. I don't know how they did it. I don't know how idols in general do it, but they were perfect in the eyes of the fans. And they were total heartthrobs, especially Sung-jae. I think he was the fan favourite. They were both very handsome men. They must have had women all over them, like bursting down the doors of the studio to come and speak to them. And it was around this time, while Sung-jae was a rising star, that he would meet his girlfriend, a woman by the name of Yoo-seon. Exactly when their relationship began isn't very clear. Some reports say that they started dating about 2 years before Sung-jae's death. And this was right when DUE were at the height of their success. Now, bear with me when it comes to Yoo-seon in this case, because she is the most confusing and elusive part of this whole entire story. And it becomes very apparent that she planned for it to be that way. Trying to find anything definitive about her or who she was or even about their relationship is like trying to catch smoke with your bare hands. Every time you think you've got some part of the truth, parts of the story just don't seem to add up. And bless researcher Rhiannon, she has gone to war for this case. But lucky for us, the K-pop fandom themselves have done extensive research, a lot of detective work, and they have been able to fit together some of the pieces of this case. So please do keep in mind, as we're talking about this girlfriend, that some of what we've found out about her does come from rumours swirling around fan sites, but let's unpack them, shall we? We'll unpack them together and decide what we think is true together. It's believed that Yoo-seon came from a very rich family in Seoul, which makes a lot of sense considering she did manage to find herself in the same circles as Kim Sung-jae, one of the most rich and famous idols at the time. At the time of this case, she was studying to become a dentist, but her grades weren't very good, and she was under a lot of stress because of this. And this becomes very important to her alibi later on. So remember, she was trying and failing to become a dentist. Now, one of the theories that we've seen circling on these websites, a lot of K-pop fans label Yoo-seon as a sasang. Sorry if I'm pronouncing that one wrong. Sorry, I've like really popped my puss in terms of the pronunciation in this vid, but this one is really tricking me up. Sasang? A sasang is a Korean term for a fan of an idol who is like obsessed, unhealthily, like delusionally, stalkery obsessed with their idol, to the point where it's like borderline criminal, or in some cases actually criminal. They become actual stalkers. But it does seem quite unlikely to me that she was a sasang. I mean, she was his literal girlfriend. When you've been consistently dating someone for 2 years is kind of like where we put that relationship, and presumably sleeping in the same bed as each other and stuff like that, surely that's a genuine relationship. Surely you can't really be categorized as a sasang anymore. Well, I guess no one really knows what was kind of going on in her mind. Maybe she was a sasang in disguise still 2 years into that relationship, but she'd just gotten really lucky and managed to win the heart of her idol that she was derangedly obsessed with. I don't know what. I personally don't really believe the sasang theory. When they first met, she would have been around 23 years old, which would make him 21. So it's no surprise that he was in the dating scene like any other normal guy his age. Except Sung-jae wasn't just any normal guy, was he? He was a K-pop idol, and K-pop idols are not really allowed to have a relationship. I mean, especially way back then, a lot of early K-pop stars actually had a no dating clause written into their contracts. It was pretty much their agency banning them from having a romantic relationship. And this was supposed to be for their own benefit as a famous figure. It was supposed to help with their fame. Remember how idols are treated more like a brand than a human being? Well, part of that brand involves them being marketed as romantically obtainable. Idols are supposed to appear always 100% devoted to their fans, and their fans are encouraged to believe that one day they might actually marry their fave. I mean, just think about how much fan fiction there is out there, even for people like One Direction, where like YN wins Harry's heart and then like her mum sells her to the band or whatever. I don't know, what was that famous fanfic? But parasocial relationships, especially for boy bands and like the pretty boy kind of artists, parasocial relationships are everything. That is what helps to sell more records at the end of the day. Fans that have been sold this dream by the marketing that, you know, this person is so devoted to them and they should be so devoted to the artist as well, it would feel like genuinely being cheated on. And I know it's not supposed to. I'm not defending parasocial relationships to that degree. I think go touch grass. I think take a deep breath. You don't know that person. But these fans have been encouraged to build this parasocial, unhealthy, devoted bond that would then just be shattered. And again, I just want to draw a parallel, or like maybe the complete opposite of a parallel, between like the Western fame culture of like PR relationships and power couples. That's not really a thing in the K-pop industry. Well, maybe it is these days, but definitely not back then in the 90s. Absolutely not. Where in Hollywood, people will get into fake relationships to boost their career. That would have the complete opposite effect in Korea. I find that just so fascinating. And I do just want to clarify that there's no evidence that Sung-jae himself was under like one of these no dating clauses in his contracts. But regardless of whether or not it was in a contract, he probably was very intentionally keeping his relationship quiet and out of the public eye because it would benefit his career to do that, and it was probably expected that he was going to do that. So at this point in the case, it is 1995, and just like all good things, the era of duh was coming to an end. I feel like I'm saying that so stupidly. The era of duh. I guess if I put the accent on every time, it'd sound a lot sexier. The era of duh was coming. Ew, that actually made it sound worse. But after 2 years together and 3 brilliant albums, the duo decided to part ways. On good terms, they just wanted to go and work on solo projects for a while, and they actually had the intention of reuniting one day, but right now, it was time for them to go off and do their own thing. Sung-jae was 23 years old at this point when he embarked on the next chapter of his career. And for it, he actually didn't stay in Korea, he flew out to the US. And we believe that this is where his relationship with Yoo-seon took a very sour turn, if it wasn't sour already. We're not actually entirely sure when the toxicity began, but it got really bad around this time. When Kim Sung-jae went out to America, Yoo-seon stayed in Korea, which is about an 11-hour flight away or a 16-hour time difference. And honestly, I don't blame her for staying there. Remember, she was training to become a dentist. So in what world should a woman ditch her studies to go and follow her boyfriend across the world for his career? But with that distance came increased toxicity in this relationship. Yoo-seon began monitoring Sung-jae. However she could, she would call him up at different times of the day, asking him where he was, who he was hanging out with, what he was doing. She was calling him up so many times a day, and Sung-jae was just so frustrated. I mean, imagine, he's under immense pressure at this point in time to pull his finger out and make the most incredible solo album anyone's ever made. His career depends on the work that he is doing at this point in time, and having his girlfriend incessantly calling him up at all hours of the day when they're on different time zones, mind you. Like, she was just making it very difficult for him. She was adding to his stress, and he couldn't really take it anymore. It was around this time when he was in America that Sung-jae was telling his manager that he couldn't be in this relationship anymore. But we don't know if it did actually come to a proper end. Everyone in this story has a different version of events, so we found it really, really hard to like actually piece this together, and I'll be honest, we still don't know. We don't know if they did actually break up. Sung-jae's manager said that they did. Said that Sung-jae told him that they had actually broken up. But Yoo-seon denies that. She says that they never broke up. And we have our own kind of theory that it could be, they could have just gone on a break or something. Maybe like a Ross and Rachel kind of situation. They were on a break. Or maybe because he was going over to America, maybe they decided to like put things on pause while he was gone. I don't know. I believe that they were just kind of on a break of sorts. I imagine that they were quite a tumultuous couple. So maybe they were one of those couples that breaks up, makes up, breaks up, makes up, you know? But I do just want to clarify. We don't actually know. But anyway, a bit later on that year, in autumn of 1995, Kim Sung-jae returns to Korea from the US and he is ready to debut his solo career. He'd been booked to perform on one of South Korea's most iconic shows, SBS TV's Live Inkigayo. That show still exists today. It's like South Korea's version of like Top of the Pops or SNL. And Kim Sung-jae was about to play that stage all on his own for the first time ever. There were going to be so many eyes on him. This was a very, very highly anticipated performance and there was a lot of pressure on his shoulders. But it was also going to be the biggest and most exciting move that he had ever taken in his career. I mean, his career had just been on such an upward trajectory. Oh, I really struggle with that word. His career had been doing really, really well, shall we say. And now he was about to debut his own solo music, all on his own. For once, he is not part of a group, and he actually has his own backing dance crew, which I think is such a sweet, like, full circle moment that that's where he got his start in Wawa, and now he's got his own Wawa. Well, not really, but his own backup dance crew. On the night of November 19th, 1995, the stage was set for Kim Sung-jae to perform his debut solo single, As I Told You, for the first and very last time. But Sung-jae did not disappoint. The choreography was punchy, his outfit was cool as hell, his energy and charisma just shined through the whole performance. The song had a really nice like feel-good vibe to it, but the lyrics were actually the complete opposite. It was all about a person feeling unable to express their love for someone. And I wonder where the inspiration for that came from. It's not hard to draw a connection between the lyrics in this song and what he could have been going through at that point in time in respect to his relationship with Yoo-seon and feeling like he has to hide it from the public. But the performance was a total success, and I bet Sung-jae and his whole team were absolutely buzzing that night. He had just taken the very first step to becoming a legendary solo singer. This was the start of something huge. But that night, just hours after leaving the stage, everything would come to a sudden, tragic, screeching halt. At around 10 p.m. that night, Sung-jae and all of his team left the TV studio and headed back to their hotel, the Swiss Grand Hotel in Seoul. It was Sung-jae, his manager, 2 American backup dancers, 4 Korean backup dancers, and his ex-girlfriend, Yoo-seon. Surprise! She was there too. Her presence here on this very monumental night is what makes me think that they never properly officially broke up. It is giving Ross and Rachel break. Her still being there for him backstage at like the biggest moment of his career so far, it says a lot. Like, they clearly hadn't written each other off. They hadn't given up on each other as partners. But anyway, all 9 of them went back to Sung-jae's hotel room just to hang out and come down from that insane performance. I bet the energy in that room was insane. So they just went back to his hotel room. They had a few beers. They watched back the performance. They all shared how excited they were. It was a really good night. By around 1 a.m., everyone had gone back to their own hotel rooms. So that's the manager and all 6 of the backup dancers, leaving only Sung-jae and his girlfriend alone in the hotel room together. The 2 of them chilled there for a couple of hours, just like talking, catching up, cuddling, whatever, I don't know. But Yoo-seon didn't actually stay the night there for some strange reason. She left the hotel at 20 to 4 a.m., leaving her boyfriend to get some rest there while she went back home. And we have no idea why she decided to go home instead of just staying the night in the hotel room with her boyfriend. I don't know, maybe they had an argument, but I don't know. She left the hotel room on her own at 4 in the morning. The next update we have is from just over an hour later, around 6 a.m. Sung-jae's manager goes into his hotel room to go and wake him up. He saw that Sung-jae was laying face down on the sofa in the living room, which was odd that he hadn't gone to the bed, but he thought he was still asleep, and with it being quite early, he changed his mind about waking him up. He thought he would let him get some sleep and come back a bit later. And eventually, when he did return to the hotel room sometime later, Sung-jae was laid in the exact same position, still face down on the sofa. And while that might not be so weird, some people do sleep face down, the manager just had a bad feeling about this right off the bat. He called out to Sung-jae and he didn't even stir. So the manager walked over to him and he starts to shake him. And when he rolled him onto his back, he realized that Sung-jae wasn't breathing. They called an ambulance as quick as they could, but it was already too late. Sung-jae was dead. And it seemed like he had been for a little while. Kim Sung-jae had died on the most important night of his whole entire life. The same night that was supposed to define the rest of his very long and spectacular career. And he was only 23 years old. When the police arrived, their initial thought was that Sung-jae had actually died of a heart attack at 23, or something like a heart attack, some sort of like physical health anomaly. But the point is, at this point in time, they weren't suspecting foul play at all. Very quickly after his body was discovered at the hotel room, it was transported to the morgue, where a 40-minute autopsy took place. But the results, well, they were hardly even results that they got. The coroner stated that the cause of death was sudden death of unknown cause. And just take that in for a second. Like, what a nothing conclusion to make. He died of death. The coroner did just put it down to probable exhaustion, but I wonder how likely that actually is, given that he was a very physically fit, very young man. And he had no underlying health issues that we know of. There was nothing. There was no reason for him to just drop dead in the middle of the night. It just seems very strange to me that investigators' first thought was to rule his death as basically unexplainable. Because, like, isn't it their job to explain it? That is why we have an autopsy. That is what your job is. Now go back and get a reason. And I was quite put off from that from the very start when I found out that they had just settled on no conclusion as a conclusion. But it gets even more frustrating than that. Trust me, the pathologists on this case like really flopped. They failed to take Kim Sung-jae's rectal temperature, which is standard practice for pretty much every single autopsy. It helps to estimate a more accurate time of death. But they never took that. So that meant that police could never actually pinpoint the specific time that Sung-jae died, and therefore they couldn't pinpoint who he was with when he died, which would have been crucial information to this investigation. To miss that piece of evidence out was of a huge detriment to the case, but they were very quickly distracted from that by some other very interesting information that came up in the autopsy. There were 28 individual injection marks found in his right forearm, both clustered on his wrist and in the crease of his elbow. Of course, the immediate story that anyone is going to pull from this is drugs. Maybe Kim Sung-jae was just another unruly celeb that was doing up drugs in the hotel after a big performance. This kind of thing obviously happened way less often in Korea because it was like so illegal, like super illegal. But it's still like such a cliche, isn't it, that the superstars all do drugs in like backstage rooms and shit. Of course, the investigators knew all about that cliche, and it did genuinely seem like Kim Sung-jae must have overdosed while getting high after the show. A police official stated, "Considering these medical findings, it is highly likely that Mr. Kim overdosed on stimulants, leading to his death." To the police, this seemed like an open and shut case, but we, on the other hand, do not believe that theory. Even though you might think that that kind of evidence is pretty hard to refute, and it kind of is, like 28 literal injection wounds in his arm, yet we're trying to argue that he wasn't doing up drugs. But all of his friends and family say that he was not a drug user whatsoever. He was such like a good boy, almost a goody two-shoes. I don't want to say that because sometimes it's seen as a bad thing, but in this instance, it was a good thing. He cared for himself and his career. He never wanted to break the rules or jeopardize anything. None of his friends and family had ever seen him with drugs or even heard him talking about drugs. It just wasn't a part of Kim Sung-jae's life. Yet, the police didn't believe that, which is fair enough. As I say, it's pretty damning evidence that there are 28 needle holes in his arm, but wait for it. His family insists that it wasn't an overdose on recreational drugs, so what could it have been? Maybe a suicide? Was he injecting himself that day? Not trying to get high, but trying to die. But again, this theory is very unlikely to me and to everyone else because he had literally just performed the show of his life a few hours beforehand. Everyone said that he was so happy. He was so excited for what was to come in his career. The night before Sung-jae died was the last time he ever saw his mother. And in fact, she said that that night he was speaking bravely and powerfully, which I think is so beautiful. She must have been so proud of her son watching him up on stage that night. But how horrifying is it to think that one night you could be congratulating the person that you love the most on the biggest achievement of their life so far, and the very next morning you get a call telling you that they're dead. His mother rushed to the morgue to go and visit him right away and to ask questions and to see her son. She was devastated. But actually, at the time that she arrived, his body wasn't yet ready for viewing. It needed to be cleansed with incense, his hair needed combing, his nails needed trimming. All of these are traditional practices in Korea before, like while preparing a body for burial. But regardless of whether or not he was ready for burial, she just wanted to see him. And so she went in there and saw him anyway. And she said that he just looked so peaceful. He looked like he was just sleeping, like he could wake up at any moment. She asked the pathologist what his cause of death was, and they informed her that her son was a victim of sudden death syndrome, which is a rare phenomena, albeit, of young people, or younger people under the age of 50, dying in their sleep without any obvious cause or like previous health concerns. So his mother gets this very nothing conclusion from them, and she is understandably very frustrated with the lack of a definitive answer. And so she went searching for one herself. Her first thought was that he might have actually really overheated on stage, and that might have damaged him in a way that it just took a long time to kill him that night. I don't know. I mean, think about it. He was wearing a lot of clothes on stage, like those big thick gloves and all that ski outfit is very heavy. It's very insulating. I'm calling it a ski outfit. It certainly wasn't. It was all stylistic, but it's kind of giving ice hockey. So his mum went looking for all the different pieces of this outfit to feel how thick and how warm her son must have been that night. But when she came across the gloves, it seemed that they couldn't have been the issue because they were very light and very breathable. And then, before his mother could do any more detective work of her own, Sung-jae's story hit the news. And the press had already made up their minds about what had happened to him. His mother was absolutely horrified to read headline after headline with the same damning words in each: Kim Sung-jae and drugs. She couldn't understand why they were saying that about her son when she was under the impression that he died of some sort of overworking, exhaustion, overheating, and now they're saying drugs? And it was only then, as she was reading the newspaper, that she read about the almost 30 injection wounds in his arm. That is the first she'd heard of this. The police in this case were absolutely terrible at communicating, especially with Sung-jae's loved ones. And it was heartbreaking, not only for her to find that out in this way, but also she was just so offended and upset with the fact that every newspaper was calling her son a drug user because she just didn't believe it was true. She was very offended by the accusation. She felt like the press were just trying to drag her son's good name through the mud, and he wasn't there to defend himself anymore. So she rushed down to the police station and she demanded more information about these injection wounds. She asked the police whereabouts on his arm they were, and so they told her right arm, around his wrist and his forearm. Now this proved everything for her because it was almost impossible for Sung-jae to have been able to inject himself 28 times on his right arm because he was right-handed. How do you inject the same wrist that you're holding the needle with? Surely someone else must have done it. And 28 needle marks is just so many. What, did he miss the first 27 times? That's ridiculous. No one would voluntarily shoot up 28 times in a row just hoping to get high. If you're doing 28 injections in a row, surely you're not expecting to survive that? So now, Sung-jae's mother decided to switch her efforts to defending her son from what she believed to be totally incorrect drug allegations. So she got in contact with a bunch of people that he'd been working with in the week run up to his death. So that's like dancers, choreographers, cameramen. She basically wanted to see if any of them had any photos or videos of Sung-jae in the days before his death that might show any like injection wounds on his arms, because then that could either prove or disprove the fact that he was a drug user. And when she did get her hands on a clip of him rehearsing for his solo show just a couple of days before he died, there was not a single mark on his arm. Sung-jae's manager and the Korean backup dancers that they were with on the night that he died all backed up his mother's theory as well, insisting that there were no drugs in the hotel room, no one was doing drugs. So what is the truth? I mean, his loved ones are so insistent, but there were needle marks in his arm, you know? It's a tricky one. And so for that exact reason, a toxicology report was done, which was like testing for the different chemicals, the different drugs that were in his body at the time of his death. They wanted to know what he had been injected with 28 times. And the testing took quite a bit longer than they actually expected, because what they found was quite bizarre. After 10 days of testing, 130,000 chemical samples later, the chemist identified two main chemicals in Sung-jae's blood system. These were teletamine and zolazepam, both common ingredients found in animal aesthetics, namely xolotl and terazol. And I mean, famously, animal anesthetics and tranquilizers have been adopted for recreational use and even medicinal use. See ketamine, for example. But these two, xolotl and terazol, weren't really commonly used like that. I think people do it, but it's quite rare. So I guess maybe it could have been possible that Sung-jae might have wanted to take such drugs, even though I don't believe it, because I don't think he would have jeopardized his career like that. But even if he did, why would he do 28 rounds of it? Absolutely no one is doing that voluntarily. Especially because xolotl can actually be quite dangerous for human consumption. When injected directly into a vein, it can easily clog them. And then you're dead. Whoever injected him 28 times with a substance that was dangerous for humans, they knew exactly what they were aiming for. They knew that he wasn't going to survive that. And with this discovery, police decided to reinvestigate the death of Kim Sung-jae officially as a murder case now. So they visited the Swiss Grand Hotel and they asked for all of their CCTV footage on the night of Sung-jae's death. But it had all been erased. What the hell? Why? The hotel claimed that they don't keep the CCTV footage. And that's all we know. Like, we don't know what they mean by that. We don't know if that means, like, the footage gets automatically deleted after a certain amount of time, because that would make sense. Or, do the cameras even work? Like, what do they mean they don't keep footage? Do they just not keep a record? Are the cameras just there for decoys? I don't know. There is one theory I've seen online, and I am not personally accusing the hotel of this myself, but I have read online that some people think they might have gotten rid of it on purpose, either because someone had asked them to get rid of that footage, or maybe because they just didn't want to be involved in this, like, police case. A drug-fueled death happening in their hotel could be quite bad PR, and maybe they just didn't want their name linking in with this news story. But again, I'm not accusing the hotel of purposefully getting rid of the footage. But the camera footage isn't the only evidence in this case that mysteriously disappeared. Two whole witnesses disappeared. The police totally forgot about those two American backup dancers that were in the room with them that night celebrating after the show. There were 9 of them in total, and there were 6 backup dancers, 4 Korean ones that had obviously been in the country this whole time, and I think they must have spoken with them. But the 2 American backup dancers had gone back to America, and police kind of forgot that they even had like a link to this case. They actually flew back home to America that morning, like a couple of hours after Kim Sung-jae would have died. And the question I have is, did they know that he was dead when they booked those flights? I mean, it makes sense that it might have been planned in advance, booked in advance. They knew that they were doing that one show in Korea, and then maybe it was back to America the next day. Maybe that was the plan the whole time. Or maybe they were running away from something that had happened in that hotel room a couple of hours before. There is definitely something unnerving about the Americans fleeing that fast after his death. I'm not gonna lie, I have a bit of a weird feeling about them, but unfortunately, that is where that lead stops. If they did do something, or if they did know something about Sung-jae's death, then I guess we'll never know, because, yeah, that is literally all their involvement in this case. They were never contacted or brought back over or questioned or anything. That's it. That's all we got. But police were very eager to speak to the last person that ever saw Sung-jae alive, his own girlfriend, or ex-girlfriend, we don't actually know, Yoo-seon anyway. So they brought her in for questioning. They needed to know if she was aware of the drug in his system. So they confronted her about it, and she gave a bit of a mad answer. She admitted that a little while before his death, she had actually gone to a vet's and bought a load of that exact medication that was found in his system. She said that she originally bought it for her pet dog, but they didn't end up using the medication, so she just chucked it all in the bin. And so she insisted that it couldn't have been her medication that was found in her boyfriend's system because hers was in the bin. So it must have been someone else's doggy sleeping pills? Like, that's... what a coincidence, huh? What are the chances? It is just such a coincidence, isn't it? That Yoo-seon buys a load of this medication and then apparently throws it all out, doesn't need it anymore. But then a huge amount of it is found in her boyfriend's bloodstream when his dead body is found. Like, again, what are the chances? Of course, this raised suspicions with the police, and Yoo-seon quickly became the prime suspect in Kim Sung-jae's murder. But there's more. Police went down to the vet clinic to verify her story about this medication, and one of the vets there told the police about this really weird experience that she'd had with Yoo-seon. So she'd come in, she'd bought all this medication, and she'd left. That part was fine, but a few days later, she then came back into the vets and told them not to tell anyone that she had previously been in there and bought a load of this medication. What? If you're not up to something shady, why do you need people to keep quiet about what should be a normal purchase? Like, imagine how strange that must have been for the vet, both in that initial moment of getting such a suspicious request from a customer, and then later, the police come back to your clinic telling you that they're investigating a murder of someone that had been killed with sleeping pills. How weird must that be? So, the reasoning that Yoo-seon actually bought all these tablets, I told you that she'd bought them for her own dog, but it wasn't for the reason that you might think. She wasn't trying to get the dog to sleep. She was actually trying to kill it. She literally admitted this to police, right? When she is the prime suspect in the murder of her boyfriend, she sits there and willingly tells the police that she was trying to kill her own dog. Like, what's not clicking? Why would you flaunt a lack of empathy, I guess? Your ability to kill another living thing. Why would you sit there and tell this to the police? But anyway, she did. She said that, yeah, she got all this medication. I think she said that her dog was sick or it needed putting down anyway or something. So she went and bought all these sleeping pills, and she planned to just feed her dog them and kind of euthanize it at home. She did say that obviously she never ended up going through with it. She said that she threw them all in the bin, and like, you know, I don't blame her, because who in the world could actually kill their own dog, like, with their own hands? Like, oh my God, like a dog that you see as family, that you've had for years and years and years, like, yeah, I'm not surprised she couldn't do it. Which, side note, I would kind of understand euthanizing a pet if you had to, if it was really sick. I would understand someone euthanizing a pet at home if they didn't have the money for the euthanizing procedure at the vets. But this is Yoo-seon, a girl that we know is from a rich family. She was not lacking in funds to be able to have someone else euthanize her dog. She didn't have to do it with her own bare hands. I guess I just can't understand making that choice when you have the money to be able to give your pet a more peaceful send-off. Like, you just take it to the vet, you lay there with it, give it an injection, and it goes off to sleep forever. Whereas the way that she is choosing to do it is quite traumatic, I would assume, to the average person, but I don't know, maybe not to someone who opts to euthanize their dog at home DIY rather than just taking it to a clinic where it can be done professionally. And euthanizing your dog at home is not technically illegal in South Korea, so it's not like she really did anything wrong, but I mean, it's not something people do. It's not something people do in South Korea. It's not something people do anywhere, for that matter. But don't worry, because she would later change her story. Don't we love it when a suspect does that? Later on, she would tell reporters that she'd actually bought all of these doggy sleeping pills to take herself, to kill herself. Not to euthanize her dog, to take her own life. So remember, she was studying to be a dentist and her grades were kind of flopping and she was failing and she was really stressed about it. Well, it turns out that kicked her into a deep depression, and that was when she bought a load of pills. And of course, that feels like a very hard thing to argue against. Like, who's gonna sit here and tell this girl that she's not actually depressed, that she's not actually suicidal? Like, I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna be the one to do that. But cue the K-pop fans, because don't worry, they have their own theories and everything. They have pieced together this timeline that says that she will have failed her exams about 10 months before she bought those tablets. There was almost a year between what she says was the trigger, was the like tipping point for her depression to become suicidal ideation. But yeah, the K-pop websites found that was actually a year before she bought the tablets. And I guess that doesn't disprove anything, does it? Some of them say that surely she couldn't still be that depressed 10 months after that initial like shock and sadness of the failure of her exams. Surely over that 10 months she would have healed and moved on and seen her other options in life. But like I say, it's very tricky because I don't want to sit here and tell someone that they're not depressed. I mean, her failing her exams could have been the catalyst for what just kind of snowballed. That could have been the first thing that made her depressed, and it could have gotten gradually worse over the 10 months to the point where she was then suicidal. I mean, it does actually make sense to me, even if it doesn't make sense to some K-pop fans on the forums. But I just think in general, I don't really trust Yoo-seon. I don't trust the things that she says. Like, she's changed her story too many times to the point where I don't know what's true and what's not anymore, so I'm just going to kind of not really believe anything. And you know what? They never actually found the pills. She said that she'd thrown them all away. They checked all her bins and stuff like that. They never found them, which I guess, again, isn't necessarily proof of anything. They could have already been taken to landfill, or they could have already been injected into Kim Sung-jae. Who knows? Yoo-seon said that when she left the hotel room that night, well, in the early hours of the morning, remember she left at 3:40 a.m. all on her own, and we never actually find out why she left, which is weird. And this was just 2 hours before he was found dead. Yoo-seon insisted to the police that everything was fine when she left at nearly 4 a.m. She said that Sung-jae was fine. He didn't have any injection marks on his arms. He wasn't on any drugs as far as she was aware. She said that he just went to bed and she went home. And you know what? As suspicious as Yoo-seon is, like, I get it. I'm on the same page. But we have to acknowledge that police are kind of missing a motive at this point in time. This was her boyfriend after all. Why would she want to murder her own boyfriend? Well, police did some digging and they found that on November 15th, just 5 days before Sung-jae died, he had supposedly broken up with her. That is what his manager says. And as I said before, Yoo-seon denies there ever being a definite breakup. So there's a lot of different stories going on. The police were more inclined to believe Sung-jae's manager over the suspect in the case, I guess. So they kind of believed that there had been a definitive breakup. And with this new information, police then theorized that Yoo-seon was just a scornful ex-girlfriend, a sasang that was so obsessed with her own idol boyfriend that she had to kill him if she couldn't be with him. And not only did this motive seem very believable to the investigators and the police, it also seemed very believable to the general public of Korea. It's very hard for K-pop fans to imagine their favourite idols having a girlfriend or a boyfriend, a relationship. And so this crazy sasang storyline is quite easy for them to buy into. The idea that Sung-jae was charmed, well, enchanted, manipulated, in fact, by this sassing, this obsessed girl. You know, it probably made them feel better just in general about the fact that he had a girlfriend. It wasn't true love. He was manipulated. If they can tell themselves that she was toxic, she was a bitch anyway, of course it was going to end in her murdering him because she was evil. Well, the next big development in this case happens on December 9th, which is just 19 days after the murder. So a relatively quick-moving investigation. And on that day, police arrested Yoo-seon on suspicion of the murder of her boyfriend, Kim Sung-jae. Her trial began 2 months later, and even an hour before the court proceedings began, the courthouse was filled with teenage girls. All Sung-jae's fans as well. Bear in mind that all of them really didn't like her, so this was about to be a rough trial. And remember, this was a time like way before the internet. Well, it was 1995, and I guess like internet cafes had started popping up in South Korea around that time, but people weren't really like planning meetups on social the way that we are these days. So it was just like local fans of Sung-jae that had all planned to meet up at the courthouse just through word of mouth. I don't know, I just thought that was kind of interesting that like, you don't see that anymore, do you, hey? All these kids and their screens. So, the trial begins, and the prosecution is just given loads of evidence as to why Yoo-seon is just this crazy psycho stalker girlfriend. And Sung-jae's manager is a huge witness to all of this because he saw a lot of the abuse. Let's be honest, it was abuse. It started off with her just being like very controlling over the phone, always calling him while he was at work, demanding to know who he was with, what he was up to, what he was gonna be up to. Like, she was keeping tabs on him. And then the manager went on to mention that Yoo-seon could be physically abusive at times, and she often overstepped boundaries. She would pepper spray him, she would tie him up, among other things. The prosecution just emphasized that she was in general just a very aggressive and highly calculated person. But she furiously denied these accusations. She insisted that her and Sung-jae were happy together. It wasn't a toxic or abusive relationship. She wasn't manipulative. She insisted that their love was genuine, and had he not tragically died in his hotel room, they would be getting married. Oh, and there was one very interesting update in this trial. A forensic examiner came up to testify that the amount of sleeping pills that were found in Sung-jae's system had actually reached a lethal dose, which this finally officially confirmed his cause of death to be an overdose on these PET sleeping pills. And it was clearly not a self-administered dose. Remember, all the injection wounds were on his right arm, he was right-handed. So this was proof that someone else had drugged him and killed him. Naturally, all eyes are still on his girlfriend or ex-girlfriend, Yoo-seon, who had already admitted to the police that she had gone to the vets and purchased a large quantity of these drugs with the intent to kill. To kill who is the real question though. She says her dog or herself. The majority of the world and the court believed that that medication was to kill her boyfriend, Kim Sung-jae. Yoo-seon was 26 years old when she was found guilty of the murder of her boyfriend, Kim Sung-jae, and she was sentenced to life imprisonment. But in a twisted turn of events, 9 months later, her lawyer requested a second trial and it was granted, and Yoo-seon was found not guilty this time. After nearly a year in prison, the judge at this second trial decided that the evidence against her was actually just too circumstantial, and eventually it was changed to not guilty. She was not guilty of the murder anymore. As I said before, the police really fluffed up this case when it came to collecting evidence. And the pathologist, remember, they didn't take his rectal temperature, so they couldn't figure out his time of death. That really effed up the police investigation. Police took a long-ass time to get the CCTV from the hotel hallway. If it was on, like, an automated delete system after a week, then, like, that's on the police for not acting quick enough, you know? And remember those 2 American backup dancers that just, like, left the country the next morning? That's whatever. But the police should have tried to get in contact with them. They should have I don't know, they could have filed actually to be able to bring them back over, I think, but they didn't bother filing anything. They thought it was just going to take too long and there was no point. It wasn't worth their energy. But what if those two American backup dancers knew something? But anyway, this is why the ruling was eventually changed to not guilty in this second trial, because the prosecution didn't really have any like major hard evidence, no proper concrete like slam dunk pieces of evidence. There was nothing that could disprove that Yoo-seon had thrown her medication in the bin. Like, yeah, we have proof that she bought it from the vet, but if she says she threw it in the bin, like, and we can't disprove that, it's hard. I feel like at this point in the trials, it was kind of her word against the prosecution's word. And the first time, they believed the prosecution, but this time, they believed Yoo-seon. So, yeah, she's not guilty anymore. And they actually determined in the second trial that the motive for murder wasn't as strong as the prosecution had thought in the first trial. Like, do you remember when they were really, really labeling her an obsessive, sassing, stalker, crazy bitch? In the second trial, they were a lot more kind of nuanced about it. They were like, yep, she's his girlfriend. So, I don't know, and had been for 2 years. And as I was saying earlier on in the case, you would form a bond beyond like being a crazy fan of them. I mean, you would think. I have actually never dated Harry Styles, so I wouldn't actually know about how that like fan to lover pipeline goes. But I don't know, you would assume that after 2 years you wouldn't be obsessive fan anymore. You would just kind of feel lucky to be with them. I don't know. I think I never quite fully believed the Sasang theory. If I'm going to believe any of these theories, then I think it would just come back to that she seems to display a lot of controlling and toxic and abusive behavior. And, you know, maybe it did just reach a peak to the point where he's now dead. But you know what is interesting, actually? In the second trial, it was determined that Yoo-seon actually purchased, the amount of medication that she purchased was actually under a lethal dose. I'm not 100% sold on this. Like, I'll take it at face value. I'm always kind of willing to do that when it's a case closed. I'm willing to accept answers. But not this time. Okay, not necessarily that I don't believe it, but I think if they were to get in another pathologist on this second trial, then different people might have different ideas of what a lethal dose could be for his like height and weight. You know what I mean? Because this is an animal medication, is there like a full-on chart of lethal doses for people of different BMIs, for example? I don't really know what I'm trying to say. Basically, what is considered a lethal dose for one pathologist, is it the same for every pathologist, or could two pathologists have different opinions? I don't know. Anyway, that was the verdict of the second trial. She was let free. She was let out of prison. She was not guilty. But when Lee Hyun-do, do you remember the other member of DUE, when he heard this not guilty verdict, it hit him really hard. He felt like his friend had been betrayed by the legal system. He believed that Kim Sung-jae had been denied justice. He felt like this ruling was incorrect and he wanted to do something about it. So in November 1996, a whole year after Kim Sung-jae's death, Lee Hyun-do held a press conference. In front of the whole nation, Lee Hyun-do sat there and announced that he would cease his official activities as a singer because he could not bear to perform in an industry, in a world that had treated his friend the way that everyone had. He felt like Sung-jae's reputation was under attack. He felt like people didn't care about him and the true cause of his death. Hyun-do called out the people that were, insisting that Sung-jae was just some drug addict. And he called all of this a defamation and disgrace to the deceased. While Lee Hyun-do's doing this press conference, it is around the same time that Yoo-seon was being released from prison. Like, I think within a couple of weeks of each other. And you're not going to believe this, guys. When Yoo-seon was released from prison, she disappeared. She fell off the face of the earth and she is just out there somewhere now. And let me tell you, we still don't fully know where she is or what she's doing. She has totally disappeared from the public eye, completely vanished. It was actually really hard for us to find any information on her. She's not on social media or the internet or anything, and no one knows for certain if she's even like the same woman with the same name, where she's living, if she even looks the same. There's actually rumors swirling around K-pop sites. There's a lot of rumors swirling around K-pop sites that we'll get onto in a minute. But there was one that I found quite funny that was like, she's had plastic surgery on every part of her face so that she can walk among us and no one's going to recognize her. And maybe, I don't know. There were some theories that she just continued on with her dentistry studies. Maybe she like went back to school and resat her exams. People say that she got married to a doctor and she just had like a simple, normal life. But there was another rumor that was kind of tagged on to that last one. Some people say that she had set up her own dental practice, but then had to shut it down when Sung-jae fans found her and started harassing her a little bit. I guess you can run, but you can't hide from justice, from the K-pop fans. To this day, her whereabouts and what she's up to remains a mystery. Just like the case of Kim Sung-jae's untimely death. But this still hasn't stopped her from ensuring that the truth stays buried. Even all these years later, she is managing to silence anyone that tries to talk about her role in this case. In February 2011, she actually sued 11 people for defamation, saying that they had labelled her as Sung-jae's murderer, when after that second trial, she is officially not guilty. She is legally considered not his murderer. So yeah, if people are out there confidently saying that with her chest that she is a murderer, she can take them to court. And she has. 4 of them were fined between 1 million and 3 million won, which, not gonna lie, I had a bit of a heart attack when I read that. I was like, holy moly, defamation is expensive. Forgot about the conversion rates, guys. In 2011, that was between £600 and 1,750, which is still not cheap, just for, you know, giving your 2 cents on the internet or whatever they did. But I guess that's the law, baby. That's how the law works. There was actually one person that she did try to take to court, the writer of like quite a big blog post, and you can tell that the writer of this blog post was a very clever person, because when she tried to take them to court, that case was thrown out because this person had worded it really well and like really fairly. They hadn't actually blatantly accused her of anything, they had just kind of hinted to it in places. But she didn't stop there with like her court cases and stuff like that. No, she's still going. In 2019, the documentary series Unanswered Questions attempted to air an episode all about Kim Sung-jae's very mysterious death. It was titled 28 Needle Marks, The Mysterious Death of the Late Kim Sung-jae. It was supposed to premiere on SBS, the same TV network that Sung-jae made his first and last ever solo performance. And as soon as Yoo-seon found out that this documentary was being made, she filed a provisional injunction ban against it. A quick law lesson for you all. A provisional injunction ban is like basically asking the court to put a temporary stop to something happening. So in this case, she's filing this injunction ban to put a temporary stop to them being able to air the episode. Usually it's because someone has a plan to solve something and they just need a bit of extra time. But I don't think she actually had a plan. I think she was just like, no, don't put it out. And then that was it. Just because she can, you know? The show actually attempted to air the episode a bit later on, I think like half a year later. But again, Yoo-seon caught wind of it. She filed another injunction ban and won again. So the documentary team weren't allowed to put it out again. I think this in itself is kind of saying something, is it not? This was the first time in 20 years that this long-running TV show was actually banned from airing an episode. And this somewhat backfired on Yoo-seon, as you can imagine. In my opinion, this is such a bad look for her. Like, she is constantly seen to be silencing and suppressing what these documentary people are saying is the true story. It's been 29 years since Sung-jae's murder, and it feels like she is just a bit obsessed with what people are saying about her online. Like, I know it's not nice. If you have been cleared of murder and you have gotten that not guilty verdict and people are still claiming you're a murderer online, that's shit. That is shit. But log off. You know, like turn the computer off, walk outside, and everything is fine. Because it is kind of only on these like K-pop fandom websites. I have a feeling, my own theory is that she stalks them. And some people do that. Some people have like that self-destructive trait where they seek out things that are going to upset them. But I feel like she's seeking them out and then getting so upset that she's spending a load of money to take people to court just because they've said something on a blog post, which she has every right to do, of course. It is illegal for people to be spreading like defamation and stuff. But again, it comes back to like, don't you have other things to be doing? The people on these K-pop websites, I'm sorry, already don't like her. And there's nothing she's really going to be able to do to change their mind. So suing people isn't really going to do much. It's not like she needs the money. She's got money. Obviously, she's got a lot of money to be able to take people to court in the first place. Just feels like such a waste of time. Anyway. And also, remember, the court has agreed with her that she is not guilty as well. And I just think, if I was in that situation, I know it's easier said than done. I've never been in that situation. Don't plan on being in a situation where, like, I've been found guilty of murder and then not guilty. But anyway, if I was in that situation, I think I would kind of just let the verdict speak for itself. Every time someone had an issue, every time someone accused me of something, I'd be like, well, what did the court say? What did the judge say? Like, she could do that and it'd be so much cheaper, but whatever. What I'm trying to say is that she could be having a nice, happy, peaceful life, but it feels like she's not allowing herself to do that because she's staying so involved with this blemish in her past from like, what, 20, 30 years ago, to the point where she is keeping it in the minds of the public. And it's even now like transcending generations. Like, people that never would have found out about this had she stayed quiet about it after she got her not guilty verdict. There's so many people that are now finding out about this because it's still in the news. I'm too young to have ever found out about this, but here I am talking about it because it's been in the news. Oh, going back to that documentary, by the way, more than 210,000 people have actually signed a petition on the president's website to ban on the documentary. People are saying that she is obstructing the people's right to know the truth about what happened to Sung-jae. By wanting to silence the documentary so bad, she has just made people so much more curious about what might actually be in there. What is she so desperate to keep hidden, you know? And it's backfired on her in even worse ways as well, because obviously the injunction's been out in the news, and this has meant that the director of that documentary has received a bunch of messages and phone calls of people wanting to give other like facts and tips and reports on the case and on Yoo-seon. By keeping it in the news, she is only drawing more potential evidence against herself. Like, you can't write it. In 2023, the director of the documentary said that he still hasn't given up on trying to air it. It still hasn't been released. He is actually looking into releasing it on streaming platforms, so I guess I'll keep you guys updated. If I hear anything on it, then I definitely want to watch it, so I'll let you guys know. And I guess with that being said, that's everything we have for this episode of Freaky Friday. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much again to Wild for sponsoring this video. Remember, if you click the link down below in the description of this video and use my code EleanorWild, then you can get 20% off of all products on their website. And trust me, you're not going to regret it. Go get yourself a tasty deodorant. Not that you should eat it, but it smells tasty. But yeah, thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Freaky Friday. It means so much to me. I've really enjoyed researching this case. It's been a long time coming, actually. We've been really working on this one. So let me know if you enjoyed it, and let me know any other cases that you want us to cover. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a thumbs up down below or comment on the video. If you engage with it in some way, it really helps to tell YouTube that you like this content, so they'll keep me in the system, is all I'm saying. That algorithm, that evil monster of an algorithm that everyone talks about. I don't know. I don't really know how it works. All I do know is that likes and comments are good for the video. So thank you so much if you have already liked or commented on any of my videos. We read all the comments. We love the comments. Anyway, I'm gonna stop blabbing. If you want to watch another one of my videos, we make true crime videos, and we have a bunch more in this series, Freaky Friday, that are like true crime adjacent. So if you want to watch another one of my videos, there'll be one on screen right now, or you can subscribe to my channel. Click the little circle with my face in. I post new content almost every single week, so I'll see you next week, shall I? Bye!